Now with this out of the way and prototypes, constructors and so on, you really learned a lot about objects. All the key parts already have been covered. Now it's about the fine-tuning and what you can do with objects, how you can configure them and work with them. I want to have a look at how you can create and delete properties on objects, which can be done in a more powerful way than you currently know it. Here I have an example object which has a cache property and a withdraw function, which basically reduces the cache property by the amount passed to the function and then prints out the new amount. So if I run this, we get that I withdrew then 1000 and therefore the new reserve is 11,000. Now it would be great to also have a deposit method. And I could create it by simply writing account deposit equals function whatever. I could do this, but I also have another method of doing this. I can use the static built-in object and call the defineProperty method. With that, I pass as a first argument the object on which I want to define a new property, account, and then as a string the name of the property I want to create, deposit for example. The third argument then is the interesting part. It's a JavaScript object, and here I configure this property. Because until now you might probably ask yourself, why would you choose this way? It's much longer than by simply doing it with dot notation. Well, here you can configure this property. And there are some keys available which you can set. For example, the value key. And of course, these keys are built in and you can't enter any arbitrary names here. But value is available. And here I can set the value of this property, like I could do it with dot notation still. So I could set that a function should be the value of this property, which takes an amount. And all it does is it increases cache by this amount. So now if I call account deposit and I deposit 3000 and then I withdraw some money right after that, I'm depositing 3000, then I'm getting 1000, I would expect to see a new cache reserve of 14,000. Let's see what happens. Yes, that's exactly the case. So the deposit worked. Still, the question remains, why would you do that? It's a bit complicated task, right, to do it like this. Well, you can not only configure the value, you get other keys as well. I'll demonstrate this with another property. I'll name it name here, and the value will not be a function, just the name of this account, like something like this. Now, of course, I can log this account name to the console, and if I run this, you see this name. So far, so good. Now I'll change the name to, let's say, ID 003, and I'll print it out again. Now that's pretty straightforward, of course, but you'll see where I want to get soon. So what happens if I print this? Somehow this didn't get updated. It's still the old name. The reason is, if we create a property with defineProperty, by default it's read-only. So I have to pass another configuration here. I can make it writable by setting writable to true. Now if I run this code, you see the name changed. And this should be the point where you understand where the value of defineProperty lies. It's useful if you want to create a property with a more detailed configuration. You can't do this with the normal dot notation. But here you can use the default by not specifying anything here, which would make it read-only. Or you set it to be writable. You also got other fields you can set. For example, you can set it to be enumerable. And this will come in handy in the next few lectures where I talk about how you can loop through all the fields in an object. This basically will allow you to switch this on and off if this should appear when looping through, but I'll come back to that as I said. You can also create getters and setters. So I can create or set the get field here and set this equal to a function. This function will be called whenever I try to access this name value here. Then I can define what should happen when this gets called. I could, for example, return hello. Now for this to work, I'll get rid of the value because I can't set this together with get. And now if I run this code, you'll see hello there. So I'm getting hello whenever I try to get the value of name. I can also specify a setter, which could do something, but for this to be more useful, I'll go up to my account up here and I'll add a property or two, underscore name, where I will have a default value, let's say. So this is a property on my object. And I'm creating a new property, also named name, but without that prefix. And that's just a naming convention I'm using here. Both names are totally up to you. In the setter, I'll then set this dot underscore name equal to name. And here in the getter, I'll return this dot underscore name. I'll also make sure that here I'm passing name. And here I should add a comma after this field. So if I now click on run, you see we get default and then the new ID. But we got this getter and setter in between. And if I return hello here again, and I run this again, I see hello all over the place. So with getters and setters, you can control how values in your object are being set or fetched whenever something else from outside tries to access them. This can be used to filter values, for example. So let's say I'm always returning this name, but I'm not always setting it. I want to check if name equals max. Only in this case will I set the name. This of course means if I run this now, it stays default, because here where I try to set the name, it's not successful since this if check here is not successful and ever I'm not setting this name. This however is important because this name here is what I retrieve when I try to access this name property. So this name property is kind of like a filter which bridges the outside of this object and the inside, so which controls the access we have on this object. That being said, what's always possible in JavaScript is to simply print account underscore name. If I run this, you'll always see I do get access to this, and you'll see this clearer if I print hello in all the other cases. Here I'm still able to access default. Nonetheless, if you choose a setup where you provide getters and setters, and in the end you are the person writing your source code, you can make sure that you implement such filters and prevent certain values from being set. And even besides getters and setters, as you learned, this defineProperty allows you to set up and configure your own properties for your objects. And again, in the cheat sheet, you'll learn more about this and you'll find links which explain you which configuration you may use with the defineProperty method here. Of course, there's more than just get, set, and writable.